Thank you very much, Terry, and once again, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Stoughton Candidates Forum for 2015. As Terry so ably said, this forum is sponsored by the Sharon Stoughton League of Women Voters and the Stoughton Chamber of Commerce. You will hear from the candidates for elected positions here in Stoughton for the Board of Selectmen, Moderator, and School Committee. But before I explain the format for this evening, I wish to address some troubling accusations. Rumors have been spread by some individuals that a candidate was given the questions prior to appearing on SMAC's Community Forum 2 weeks ago or before tonight's forum. Let me state emphatically that I resent that my ethics and integrity or that of the candidate has been brought into question. So that all are clear, I unequivocally state that no candidate for any office received any questions from me in advance of either the Community Forum program or tonight's program. With that said, let me turn to the format for this evening. Each of the candidates will have an opportunity to answer questions, and they have been seated and have selected, the Selectmen candidates have pulled straws to determine what seat they will sit in, and they will be asked questions by me, and they will have 2 minutes to respond. They will also have an opportunity for a 2-minute closing. To the extent that there is time, questions will be taken from the audience, and Mary Lou will have, who is here to my left, will have paper and pencils for those questions, and she'll be gathering them during the time that we are questioning the candidates. I want to thank the Sharon Stoughton League of Women Voters, the Stoughton Chamber of Commerce, and certainly Michael Hammond, Jeffrey Pickett from SMAC, my camera person, Eric Stankiewicz, and also Robin Zoll, who will be the timekeeper. And I want to remark for each of the candidates that Robin Zoll will be keeping the time. She will give you the time, and when at the conclusion, you only have 2 minutes in order to respond to any of the questions. So with that being said, that's the format for this evening. Let's get right into the questioning for our Board of Selectmen. And Ms. Walsh, you're in the first seat, so I'm going to ask you the question. Why are you running for the Selectman position?
Well, I'm running for re-election because I think that the service I've provided in my last 3 terms was more than adequate. I've been in public service in Stoughton since 1969. I've been on some board or committee since 1976. Presently, I serve in town meeting. I'm on the water subcommittee. I'm on the Stoughton Reads Together committee. I volunteered Party All Night Long. I volunteer at the Brockton VA. I volunteer with the Stoughton Women's Club on Kids Day. I volunteer at the library leading the monthly book discussion group. I'm on the Cedar Hill Golf Course Operations Committee. I'm on the committee for the expansion of the public library. I'm on the committee that is planning the sewer system. As you can see, I'm a little busy, but I don't mind. I am retired now. During my first term, I was employed full-time, but I still never missed a meeting. And people seem to think that, some people don't think that's important. I think it is. The only time your vote counts is when you're at the meeting. People come to the meeting expecting a decision, and sometimes when we don't have a full board, they don't get their decision, they have to come back repeatedly. That means they have to hire an attorney again or pay an engineer. I really think that public service means service, and that when people come to a board for help, that they should get it as soon as possible. Delaying things for folks just makes their life that much harder, and for some people it actually affects their income.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. Same question, Mr. Cohn?
I'm running for selectman because of several reasons. Out of control spending, taking people and reclassifying them, telling people back in September they have a job, to reapply for it. For prime example, a woman at the police station with 40 years experience found out finally what the job classification was in December. No person in this town should be treated that way. And it's happened to a couple of people saying to them, this is the way it's going to be, and if you don't like it, that's the way it's going to be. I've been in this town for 41 years. I don't have to tell you what I've served. People know what I served. The most important thing I served was a president of the Avatora congregation and a membership committee, which, thank God I said this before, this temple is in Stoughton, Massachusetts for a long time. It was going to move a year ago. And without this temple, this town would have lost a lot of people. Also, people are moving out of this town. Just look at the real estate pages in your papers and see what's moving out. It's shameful because this town has so much to offer, so much to offer. We have our schools getting better, probably going to be better, probably going to be up to snuff this year. Our public works that deserves commending for what they did during, I'd say, 6 weeks of snow and making sure that people got out of here, excluding the T-train that couldn't even run in Stoughton, but that's beside the point. Our police department certified, by the police department certified themselves. We are now recognized, as a statement goes, the FBI used to be here investigating us, now they're here working with us. Very, very important. Our fire department, award-winning.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you
I
very
will
much.
come back to you later. Mr. O'Regan, same question.
Thank you. I'm running for re-election for the same reasons that I ran for my first term, and I'm first grateful for the opportunity to have served for one term. I ran then and I'm running now because there's a lot of work that this town has ahead of it and can do, can accomplish. In the last 3 years, I've been doing what it is I said I would do if I were elected. I've been working on making sure that we have sound financial management for the town. I've been working on getting the downtown focused to bring it back. In fact, one of the efforts is, that I've taken heart with is coming true tomorrow night when we will have a forum in this room for the Board of Selectmen on the traffic layout for the downtown. Getting that right is absolutely key to having the downtown come back to life. In my first year on the Board of Selectmen, for my first town meeting on the Board of Selectmen, it was my proposal to fund the engineering study that has produced the traffic study that will be discussed tomorrow night. That's one example of what I've been doing that I would like to continue to do. A second thing, reason for my running again, is the overall economic development of the town. Having a deep and broad tax base is key. It's key to pay the town employees what town employees deserve to be paid. It is key to making sure that the residents have a fair and equitable tax burden. It's key to have us be able to build the school. We need a new high school, to take care of the firefighters who have to work in a despicable condition in Station 1 that should have been done over 20 or 30 years ago. On the Zoning Board of Appeals and on the Board of Selectmen, I've been very active in making sure we have the groundwork for solid economic development, absolutely critical for the future and the present of the town. We can't pay the bills if we don't have the right tax base.
Thank you, Mr. O'Regan. Mr. Brown, same question.
Thank you. I'm running for Board of Selectmen for a number of reasons, but most importantly, my primary reason is because of the ballooning budget. I currently sit on the Finance and Taxation Committee. I currently sit on Finance and Taxation Committee, and I've watched the budget grow by about 5% every year to where we're at about $100 million of what we refer to as mandatory spending. In addition to that, there's about $40 million in approximate money that we owe to capital outlay and additional spendings that we have to focus on. And again, this year, there's 8.8 or roughly around 9 million more being asked of. of the town and the taxpayers. There's many challenges that are facing us, and like others have talked about, we have to find a way to confront these issues, mainly a new school building, several other town buildings, and I believe that I bring the necessary qualities. My background is of Massachusetts Department of Correction, where I'm a retired lieutenant. I've been involved in many decisions from a difficult standpoint. So I'm running to bring a fresher, new approach to the Board of Selectmen, and hopefully to help accomplish these issues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. The next question comes to you, Mr. Cohn. Currently, we have many groups who are involved in looking at the downtown and its revitalization. Do you think it's beneficial to have so many groups involved, or are there too many hands in the cookie jar?
We hired a firm once. We hired a firm twice now by different groups in town. I'm waiting for the results. We have done nothing in this center of town except make more traffic and have more people move out. I exercised the plan, first of all, I told you last week. Number one, we've got to get the traffic out of control. And yes, there's too many fingers in this, Mr. Feaster. The Board of Selectmen are the traffic commissioners, and they're supposed to handle the traffic. We hire people to do these reports, and it takes forever till we get them. I know we have an economic developing person, which I met the other day, quite qualified to do, and getting in step now to do it. That's her job to do that with the help of people of this town to work with her. But as far as that, there's too many hands involved here, and the more hands we get involved, the more problems we have. You assign people, you hire people, let them do their job. This downtown can be revitalized. She told me the other day there were 3 people looking to put a restaurant here. We need a liquor license. Mr. O'Regan last year at town meeting applied for 6 of them. We're still waiting, and I understand it goes through the state, and it's a long wait. That will help. But we got to get rid of the traffic. No one is going to come in this town, and no one is going to come in this town without parking. And I said before, the Chamber of Commerce handles small business. That's where it should be too. The Chamber of Commerce is very important in this. And as far as that goes, if we have to put a police officer, there's a traffic change coming tomorrow night, and I thank the engineer for going out of his way to do something about this. He did a great job, and I'll be here tomorrow night supporting to what he did. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. Mr. O'Regan.
So without knowing who says what about having too many, without knowing who is saying what about too many fingers in the cookie jar, always room to criticize or comment on problems. It's tough to answer that question because I don't know whose fingers don't belong in the cookie jar, but I do know who's involved and why it's important that they are involved. The downtown is a complicated problem to rectify. We need all of the hands we can get. The slogan, "Many hands make for light load," applies for the downtown. Each group that's working in this program has its own function. The job of the Board of Selectmen is to coordinate the work by these various folks, including staff, to get the job done. The Board of Selectmen are the road commissioners, but the Board of Selectmen can't and shouldn't just get up and dictate how the roads are going to work. We kind of saw how that worked with the current configuration of the roadway. The Redevelopment Authority is involved. As a small town, we are rather unique in the state to have a redevelopment authority. They have a tremendous ability to get things done in revitalizing an area. A master plan committee focuses, among other things, on how changing the downtown will affect the entire community. Absolutely key for us to have that. And then there are individual efforts. I was happy to offer the bylaw amendment for 6 new liquor licenses just in the downtown, just for hospitality, just so when we get the development, we can have hospitality restaurants, not bar rooms in the downtown. The parking garage. We have a parking garage. The Board of Selectmen adopted a policy to develop the downtown. I wrote that policy. It includes a parking garage in cooperation with the MBTA.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Regan. Mr. Brown, same question.
Well, this is a question that we've talked about many times and seems to be pending for quite some time. As far as your question that directly goes to whether there's too many people in the process, I would say that we should welcome as many and as thoughtful people that want to get involved. I know there's been a suggestion of involving the business community in itself. I think that downtown presents some extremely complex and challenging situations. We all know traffic is an issue. We all know that parking seems to be an issue, but how do we get the businesses down here? Now, it's said that politics makes for a strange bedfellow, and I would say that we have currently an opportunity there of a building going in downtown, and it's been held up for whatever particular reason. Now, I would say that's a start in the right direction, and why we don't pursue that, or why there's been the process to put that new building is held up, doesn't really show me that we're inviting, or all that inviting. We can't allow certain people to decide, only certain people decide what is best and what is not best for this town. So I think that in order to pursue and get to the economic growth that we need down there, downtown, that we're going to have to sit back, roll up the sleeves, come together as a group, and involve as many people that want to work collectively to accomplish this goal. But questions need to be asked as well, like what is the end, what do we gain in the end? What are the financial gains? How do we achieve what we're looking to do and still benefit and keep the town the way people want to see it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Ms. Walsh, same question.
Well, as a previous speaker said, there's an aphorism for everything, and for every aphorism there's an opposite aphorism. So the one that says too many cooks spoil the broth, as a previous speaker said, many hands make light work. And as another previous speaker said, the more people that have input to a decision, the better decision is going to be made. That's why we live in a democracy. If one person could make all the rules, be it a king or a dictator, yeah, the trains would probably run on time. But that's not the kind of government that we want. We want a government where we have a public hearing. The Board of Selectmen does, as street commissioners, we could sit down tomorrow night, approve the engineer's plan for a test for 3 months or 6 months of a configuration that was planned by a study. There was a study done. The town engineer drew upon that study, came up with some options. Some options are low cost. Those are the ones we're going to try first. Because if we find that a low cost option isn't going to work, then there's no point in putting more money in that option. We try another option. I think people do criticize town government. Some people want 5 town councilors making all the monetary decisions instead of 168 town meeting reps. But in this town, we found that there are checks and balances. Town meeting decides where the money, how much money is spent, and where it goes. They have recommendations from 5 standing committees and the Board of Selectmen and the town manager, but those citizens, those taxpayers, the majority of them make the final choice on how to spend all of that money. So I encourage people, when you vote on the 7th, don't just vote for selectmen or school committee. Skip down to the bottom of the ballot, because the folks that are going to spend that $100 million are your town meeting representatives.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walsh, and your comments provide a segue for the next question, which will be fielded initially by Mr. O'Regan. There is a perception that town government isn't working efficiently. What charter changes would you recommend, and what form of government do you think would work most efficiently in Stoughton?
I think the biggest issue for I just wanted to make sure my green light was on. The biggest issue that we have in how town government works here is we haven't taken advantage of what the charter says how government is supposed to work. And there are a few slight changes I think we could make in the charter that would make the town government we have work much better. I'm a believer in the town meeting process, but only if it works. And the first thing we need to do to make this town government work is people have to vote. The primary reason, I believe, why town government here has not worked as successfully as we wish it would is that we have a voter participation rate in the teens. So 85% or more of the people who can decide choose not to decide. That's the biggest change. What difference would it make? The difference it would make is that there'd be a fuller role of everybody in how the decisions were made. There would be a clearer message to those participating on what the priorities of the town were, so that in the event that 1 or 2% difference in the electorate makes in the election swings who's on one board or another. And that has dramatic consequences. I think that we need to change the way that the budget is submitted to town meeting. Right now, the Board of Selectmen has to submit a budget to town meeting before the state provides the revenue figures. So everybody in town government is playing catch-up, and the selectmen don't really have the opportunity to put a meaningful budget ahead because the selectmen don't have the real numbers to work with. Which town government? I think we should first try to fix the town government we have before we start tinkering with others. Go around the world.
Well,
People would die for this form of government, and
thank
do.
you so much, Mr. O'Regan. Mr. Brown, same question.
Well, out of the sentiments, I strongly believe in the democracy process. I believe in the town government we have. I think it does work. I think that if we set our goals on a realistic approach, the vetting process of the budget is done way prior to town meeting. I apologize. I think I said that I do believe in the democracy, and I do believe that the system is working. I think we have to approach a town meeting with a sense of urgency and understanding that we are deciding where our tax dollars are going. So the members, whether elected, write-in, or volunteers, sit in the town meeting, whether it's 6 weeks or 12 weeks, and everybody seems to think that the town meeting goes on a little too long. I would make the case that that may be because we insert a lot of articles. There are a lot of spending articles that have to be vetted. The process itself, prior to leading up to town meeting, is working. It may be there might be better ways to look at it and give a better sense of way we're going. But I honestly think that the democracy itself, the town meeting the way it works, with a couple of exceptions, and I think that if we focus and stick to a real time frame, that the town meeting will work effectively, and we can all be satisfied that we know that we all participated in the process, and we can be happy with the results of where the spending goes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Ms. Walsh, same question.
Oh, I've been attending town meetings since 1976 and a member since 1983, so I don't think I would have put that much time and effort into something I didn't believe in. We do need some changes, and we might even have to go back a ways. There was a time when there was a microphone in both aisles, and if you wanted to speak on an article, you simply got in line and you waited your turn instead of people joke about me practically standing on my chair and waving flags to get recognized. And the perception of some people that certain people get recognized and others don't. So that would change that. And I think things would move a little quicker if you are waving your arms to support an article and the moderator's making a list. But if you see that there are 10 people and each and every one of those people supports the article, then all you have to do when it's your turn is you get to the article, when you get to the, you can either sit down or when you get to the mic say, I agree, and sit down. I think that would pick the pace up. But as I also think the way that the precincts are configured is based on population. Stoughton has a fairly large immigrant population, and if you're not an American citizen, you can't vote. And we should be forming our precincts, or the state should let us perform our precincts based on voters rather than on just bare population. And we might want to go back, instead of having 8 precincts, go back to having 6. because some precincts are having an incredible time getting enough people. And I really, as a previous speaker said, 10 nights out of 365 to spend $100 million is probably time well spent.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walsh. Mr. Cohn?
We have 28,000 people in this town, 28,000. I don't think I'm far off. Town meeting is here, but I could see in the next 5 or 6 years, we're going to a city council, mayor government. There's no doubt about that. Your zoning has to be changed. You have to have the charter reviewed, come back and start rewriting some of these rules. They're archaic. For an example, a sewer study committee from 1980. That's the last time we did a sewer study on our sewerage system in this town. That's pathetic. Pathetic. And I shouldn't, if you go into the rules and the zoning rules in this town, some of them go back probably even longer. As far as town meeting goes, it's the government we have. The town moderator has so many articles. He stated when he ran way, way back that he was going to give everyone a chance to speak. And he does. Sometimes I disagree with him. Sometimes he don't want to recognize you. As long ago, I think people out there will remember Bill Kelly. And Bill Kelly used to turn and tell a certain gentleman here he couldn't see him because he has cardiacs. Excuse me, I'm all right. But things like this, as far as the Board of Selectmen, there's ways to change that too. They don't exercise their full authority. They give it up. And you've got to be more forceful as a Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cohn. The next question will begin with you, Mr. Brown. Stoughton currently has 3 building projects being considered, and suspect that's the school, and that's the library, and that is the fire or public safety building. How would you prioritize these 3 projects, and how would you propose the town pay for them?
Well, that's a very good question. As far as priority, we kind of have a pending situation here with the library. Has been approved at town meeting and is pending funding. I believe the article is on the docket for this coming spring. I think the second priority to me would be the school, new high school. My daughter attends the high school, so I deal with the traffic situation and the older building and the worn out labs and things of this nature, so I'm familiar with that. And the third and last would probably be the public safety building, and I know that we have spent, we just built a second fire station not too long ago, and the police station is relatively new. As far as funding these types of projects, which of course I support, I believe we have to look at growing the economic development in this town. And by way, we have to find some incentives to bring businesses to this town, and I mean by businesses, I mean maybe corporate, medical, international companies. There's an example of Amazon and how we, the Board of Selectmen or the town manager negotiated and brought Amazon here for 10 years. They gave them a fairly decent deal, in my opinion, maybe more generous than they really needed, but it brought economic growth to the town as far as jobs. It will bring revenue instead of not having a place being occupied, and we're going to have to find some way to get these other businesses, in particular big businesses, corporate businesses, to come here and help offset the taxpayers, because I don't think we can afford as a taxpayer to continue to try to field these types of costs without looking at the override or debt exclusion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Ms. Walsh, same question.
Well, as a previous speaker mentioned, these projects are pretty much in order. The library, town meetings approved the borrowing, the state's approved and provided the funding, it's there waiting. With the high school, we're in the feasibility stage of whether we renovate or add, or whether we build a whole new high school. The state is going to pay more than half of that money. With the public safety building, I know there's a committee already looking for potential sites for that. So that, they're pretty much already in order just because of that's the way it's set up. As to funding, you have to remember, we built a firehouse, a police station, we renovated this building, we built a senior center, all without an override or a debt exclusion. The schools that we have now that were built in the 60s and 70s, that was all done without an override or a debt exclusion. The business, Stoughton, except for Avon, a larger percentage of our tax base is business than the surrounding communities. And so that's one source. I really don't think the high school has to be replaced. I think we can do what they did at Southeastern Regional, add to the building, and also take some of the space that's already existing and renovate it into the science labs that folks want. I went to Norwood High, I went to Whitman-Hanson. I didn't see that much of an improvement. In fact, the state is not going to build us the size school we have now. The state says we only have only a little more than 1,000 kids will be going to that high school in the next 20 years. They've done the populations.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walsh. Mr. Cohn, same question.
The library's been approved. We can borrow on that. Our borrowing power is very, very low right now. We've paid a lot of our money off. The treasurer said we'd borrow that. The next one is your high school. I disagree with the previous speaker. Once you start renovating and breaking the walls down, I've been in this business for 50 years. When you break this wall down, whatever you figure 30% more, because the contractors will come in here and they'll extra you to death on this, and you will pay for it. As far as the state says, they'll bill you schools now for the size of the children, and Ms. Walsh is right by saying the size of the children. My child went in '94, I think there was 375, 400 kids graduating. I think there was a little more than 200 this year, if I'm not mistaken. The population is declining. And the next thing in the high school is you better make sure you have a team here that watches that high school get built. Because if you have the wrong team up there, we'll have a disaster here. Disaster. The fire, as far as the public safety building, I'm glad we have something going. But as a previous speaker, that dump over there, the fire station, the dump, that we spent $160,000 on, go over there and I look at what we got for $160,000. Very little. And the mistakes and everything that's there, they tried, but that building's got to come down. It's a wood floor, and we got $1 million fire engine sitting in that floor. It's not going to cave. But we also got to find a place for this, and you got to build that place with room for expansion. You need expansion. We built that police station, the word was expansion. The day they moved in, it was too small. What a waste, and all kinds of problems at that police station. And we're still paying to fix it. How many years later? 10.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cohn. Mr. O'Regan, same question.
Priorities of projects. Town meeting voted already on the library. Town meeting's already made the library a priority. I'm not a fan of going backwards. This town needs to go forward. So the library is on the plate. The funding is in line. It should be done. The public safety building and the school are on two different tracks. I can't differentiate on importance between the two of them. Both of them are critically needed. Our children went to this high school. I remember hearing the children going to that high school calling it Hogwarts. And if you've been in one section of the building, you know exactly what they meant. But worse than that, the building is functionally obsolete. The costs to continue operating and maintaining it are ridiculous. It's got to go. And also, investing in the new high school means a lot for the future of the town. A public safety building was a priority I had when I first got elected. One of the first things I was able to do is have a town meeting warrant put in to fund a public safety building study. That study is nearing completion. Anyone who has a tour of either Station 1 or the current police station will realize in 5 seconds both facilities are completely insufficient. And when you look at the kind of public safety issues we face, particularly with the police department, those facilities are inadequate to meet the needs that this community has, particularly with investigation detectives and training space for the police officers. As far as making these priorities stick, another thing we did was create a building fund. So we're now saving for these buildings. First time this town, to my knowledge, has done so. What difference does it make? For every building, I want to have peer review of every plan, every drawing. I want to have an independent, licensed, insured architect, independent and licensed, insured engineer review the plans before we turn one shovelful of dirt. And I want a paid, insured project manager for every building.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Regan. Before I move to the next question, I want to remind the audience, and I'm going to ask Mary Lou to collect the questions that the audience has submitted, because those questions, both Terry and Mary Lou will select some of the questions to be asked of you, and if we have time, it may be one, it may be two, but we'll determine that once we have received the questions and have a sense of what the timing is. The next question comes back to you, Ms. Walsh. The town of Stoughton is fortunate to have its own Chamber of Commerce. Many towns and cities are part of larger regional chambers. How do you feel the fact of having our own Chamber of Commerce benefits the town? And how do you think that the town departments and boards could work more efficiently with the chamber to benefit the town?
I think part of your question seems to imply that the town doesn't work with the chamber.
Doesn't imply anything. It states a proposition
I
that
was
they
going to
have
say,
put.
you're in a town-owned building.
Yes.
Hope none of the tiles come loose. Well, I don't know a lot about the chamber. I go to some of the events. I know it's an attempt to get folks from Stoughton, but other communities too are represented, to encourage them to kind of cross-pollinate, so that if someone in the chamber needs some printing done, they go to someone who's also in the chamber. And that way they get to know each other, and also perhaps save some money and keep the dollars in this area. My father was self-employed. He ran his own business, which meant he was his own employee, and he also did his own books and everything else. So I have that example of someone who had a small business. My brother has a small business. My nephew has a small business. I'm not a member of the chamber, but I do farm my property, and we do sell the produce, so maybe I should earn enough money on that to buy a chamber membership. But I think the chamber has a positive impact on the community, and I don't think it has to be joined up with other chambers.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. Mr. Cohn, same question.
Very important. Very important. The chamber represents the future of this community, and I said it before. Downtown, work with the chamber. Small businesses. I've gone to a couple of the meetings. I worked out of town for all these years and never had time to come back here to join the chamber. It was always late at night when I come back home. The chamber also can work with our economic developer, which I suggested to her when I met with her a week ago, to work with the chamber. The chamber also, if you go into the certain stores, they give you a discount for stores around town. That saves these people, first of all, they want you to do business with the chamber members. Second of all, you get 10%, 5%, 20%. Most important, if I'm going to a community, a strange place where I go, I call the local chamber. Hey, where's a good restaurants? They give you a list of restaurants. We're fortunate to have our own, which is important. And the gentleman that's the president of the chamber has been there a long time and knows what to do. As far as working with the government, I can't tell you that. I'm not part of the government. I'm not up here. I can't answer that question for you. But as far as the chamber goes, It's very important for that center of town and economic development of this town with the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cohn. Mr. O'Regan, same question.
I think I'm the only member of this panel running for the Board of Selectmen who is a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I've been a member for I don't know how long. It's a valuable organization. It's also a non-political organization. I think for the service to the town, the Chamber does extraordinary work by encouraging activity of its members in the functioning of the town and in being a resource for town government, especially because we now have a town planner and an economic development officer to work with the Chamber. Until 7 years or so ago, when on the floor of town meeting, several of us pushed to have the town planner created, there was nobody in town hall whose job it was to work with businesses in the community. Until we added the economic development officer, there was nobody in town government to work with the business community. And we can see the consequences of those decisions to not have those roles in the way that our town developed over the course of that time, in that the businesses we got and the businesses that left. Now, the Chamber as a political force, you know, I really get the sense that Chamber members, although they're active, do not want the Chamber to become politically involved in the town. But the Chamber certainly can set a tone for the town of what the business community expects government to do and how government ought to behave responsibly, make decisions based on the facts and the reasons and the sound policies that successful businesses need to use when they make decisions. And of all of the things that the Chamber can do for our town government is to impress upon our town government the kinds of business disciplines, decide on facts, decide rationally, and look at the longer term. That's what makes members of the Chamber successful. It's what will make the town successful.
Thank you, Mr. O'Regan. Mr. Brown, same question to you.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the Chamber that we were invited to the dinner they hosted on the 2nd of this month. It was a very good dinner and much appreciated. The hospitality was great, and it was a chance to actually get an opportunity for me to meet some of the business owners. I think that having the Chamber of Commerce, it's vital to any partnership, and it's essential to the growth of this community. I know that it happens, the Chamber happens to have a lot of people involved that provide lots of activities and recognizes people throughout the town, and I know that we participate in, one of the speakers mentioned earlier about the cards and trying to get references in terms of restaurants and businesses to appropriate to and to attend and actually do my business with. But the real picture here is that it's a support system that any town can't do without our city, because in the end, it's really about the stakeholders, the residents, and the businesses buying in on the mission and the goals of what we want as a community. So I believe that the Chamber serves a very vital role and important in this community.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. I'm going to take a little bit of moderator privilege here because there were some additional questions that had been prepared by the League of Women Voters and by the Chamber of Commerce. But I think that it would be useful and helpful for have some inquiry being made by the citizens of the town. And I would ask that Mary Lou or Terry would bring some of the questions up so we can ask you those. And this next question will be, start with you, Mr. Cohn, with the question that we have. Okay. In January, those of us on Social Security received notice of the cost of living of 1.7% as our raise. How can you support the double-digit prepared for town employees? The double-digit raise. How can you support? Let me read it again. In January, those of us on Social Security received notice of the cost of living of 1.7% as our raise. How can you support the double-digit raise proposed for town employees? Mr. Cohn.
I am one of those people that got 1.5%. And thank God I have other investments that I can live off of. I myself saw the budget. It went through the Board of Selectmen. They should have picked this up. I was not privy. I just picked up a budget last week. This town can only raise 2.5%. We're on a collision course. The schools are up to, you add all their capital outlay, are up to about 6 or 7%. And what bothers me in the schools were, the principals of the high school signed a contract for 2.5%, and we're going to give them another 2%. For what reason, I don't know. I plan to ask that at town meeting. This town has hired 5 new employees and shuffling around people around this town, reclassifying them and putting them in different positions. And we all know what that's about. It's called union busting, which the people in this town already went Thursday into the labor board. I'd like to see the results of that one. The papers was that big because I saw it. We have to watch our money, and we're not. Previous speaker says it's out of control spending. Thank God we have enough money now to spend it, but as people, as he says, is on fixed incomes, it's getting more difficult every year. And it's up to the board to run through these budgets, but it's also up to town meeting to stop it too. That's where it ends right there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. Mr. O'Regan, same question.
So I remember sitting with my mother in January, going over her finances and some decisions she has to make when she found out that her Social Security adjustment was what it was. So that's on one side, and it is a situation that nobody should have to deal with. And on the other hand, we have a town government. Those same citizens need to and have a right to expect that if they need an ambulance, that when they call the ambulance, it comes. That if they hear a sound they don't like and they feel uncomfortable and they call the police, that the police respond. That their children or grandchildren get educated well to live a long and happy and successful life. So that's the balance in the community that we have to strike in making these budgets. And it's not an easy balance to strike because everybody's needs and everybody's ability to pay is different. So for the folks in town and town government who work, those people are entitled to reasonable pay to be compensated fairly and comparably for the work they do. If we don't do that, we lose them, and we don't have the people to provide the services, teaching, firefighters, police officers that we need. Those are the balances that the Board of Selectmen and the school committee have to deal with. And that's why the question that the voters face when they vote is, of the choices, who seems more reliable to help figure that balance out and get it right and be fair about it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Regan. Mr. Brown, same question.
Well, this goes directly why I'm running. I happen to be retired after 20 years of credible service with the Department of Correction. 20 years of dealing with convicted felons is enough for anybody, but there isn't a time or a choice that my wife and I don't make that includes a financial decision when we approach our budget and how we spend. And I believe that that these salary increases that exceed 2% are excessive, and in some cases overtaxing. You know, I can't sit by and allow I can't sit by and endorse 12% increase, 8% increase, 9% increase, 14% increase without trying to get involved and be part of the process. And this is why I sit here before you tonight, because I've been watching this for a couple of years, and although we have to find that balance of the services that we need to have and we expect and we should expect them, we also have to understand that 12% raises for selective managers or department heads has to be within line of what we ask ourselves to spend. So I think it isn't unreasonable to
look at a reasonable increase and absolutely pay the good men and women that work for this town a reasonable rate. But I think when it starts to crawl up and start to be more than, when it becomes real conversation amongst people and when they look for a different direction, I think it becomes unreasonable and unfair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Ms. Walsh?
Nobody, no union employee got a double digit. Double digit means 10% or more. I did teach math for 30 years. Not a single contract we signed called for anyone to get that kind of annual increase. And this hurts public employees when this kind of information is spread around as gospel. And then when you admit anywhere you go that you're a public employee, that you're a teacher or a police officer, or you work for the DPW, this kind of information is thrown back in your face. And you look at your paycheck and it doesn't show any double-digit increase. So I think what the question is fallacious. It's based on incorrect information because no union employee got that kind of raise. Certainly our town manager didn't, our police chief didn't. So I mean, when you ask a question like that, there needs to be a specific. A double digit implies we all the employees got some sort of fantastic raise. If you ask them, they didn't. That's why it took longer to settle the contracts, because the employees wanted more money, and the other side was saying no. I think what we settled on is equitable. It's within the 2.5%. So I really reject that question. I think it's a slander on public employees.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh.
Of which I was one.
I'm going to take one of the questions here, and then you can also begin preparing for your 2-minute closing, because this will be the last question I'll take from the audience and that I will be presenting to you. So this question is to you, Mr. O'Regan. As a selectman, can you list the 5 top priority projects or interests, aside from the financial report, that you would require the town manager to include in his monthly reports?
The 5 top items that I would want to see in the town manager's report would be progress on on each town meeting warrant or item. That is, town meeting every year adopts special appropriations, or within the budget there are special tasks. I would like the town manager's report to include a dedicated item on that. Personnel issues, not people by people, because you really can't have that in a public document, but issues affecting the way that town services are able to be provided by people in town, so that if it requires a policy direction from the Board of Selectmen, we can give it. Equipment and facility issues that are emerging during the course of the fiscal year. One of the issues I've had is that in town meeting we find out that we need a new building, or a new piece of equipment. No kidding, last year, almost halfway through town meeting. I want to know about that in the course of the year so we can look at it. On this particular climate, progress in having the downtown work paid attention to. We're engaged with the Postal Service on that site. We're engaged with the MBTA on a parking garage. I want ongoing reports on that. And lastly, for the town manager to bring to our attention things that the town manager believes the Board of Selectmen is not paying attention to and kicking the can down the road on, that the town manager needs or wants direction on, because that happens.
Thank you, Mr. O'Regan. Mr. Brown, same question.
Well, that seems to be a very interesting question, and in fact, I support the communication part of it strongly. And although I think the town manager should be providing communication, it should be disseminated in both directions, up and down. I think that one of the most important topics that should be on the report should be spending and where we stand, and whether it be monthly or quarterly. I think the next should be projects and what might be planned. I routinely drive around the town, and I run into a construction issue or a new paving or a pipe being laid, and without going to the town site itself, I'm not really ever aware of that. Incidents, whether they be critical or involve in maintenance or repairs of buildings or vehicles or equipment. I believe the status of each department and where they're headed and what might be the climate of that particular department, either by monthly or quarterly. And I also think that general information is necessary to be disseminated to the Board of Selectmen by way of whether it be workers' comp and personnel matters. They are important, whether they're being dealt with specifically in a personal nature by the town manager. I think those types of issues need to come to the Board of Selectmen in addition. And last, I would say that one of the concerns I had the other day was that when we were being presented, it was one of the reasons why they requested additional workman comp money is because there has been some catastrophic injuries. I've never heard that any town employees were hurt to a point where they had to retire off the job. So I think that's the type of information that should be made available to at least the Board of Selectmen. So I think that communication is very important to the good process of town government.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Ms. Walsh?
Is that did you say weekly or monthly?
I didn't specify a time. I just simply said the top priority projects that would, yes, it said in his monthly reports. I'm sorry.
That's what I thought I read, or said, or heard. We're still bargaining with one union. So that would be number one. We really want all of our employees to be satisfied with working here, and one of the things that makes people happy is if they are working under a contract that's been fairly settled. So I'd want to know where that stood. The second thing I'd like to know is, who are the new hires? Who are the retirees? I come from the perspective that I was a town employee for 30 years. I don't like it when someone has worked for the town for 35 years and retires, and I hear about it through the grapevine. I think those folks need to be recognized. We're not going to buy them a chair or a plaque, but at least at a selectmen's meeting to thank that individual for that many years of service. That's something I try to make a point of doing. Did you say excluding financial?
Yes.
Okay. So the third thing would be anything that is going to improve our economic development, anything that's in the pipeline. The fourth thing, I would like an update. Where does the library project stand? Where does, he's also part of the school project. Where does that stand? What happened at the last meeting? I can't go to every meeting. Also, what are some of the sites they visited for the public, for the public safety building? And the fifth thing is anything he thinks we should know. Because we just can't know, you can't know everything. And what I hate is when I turn on TV and Channel 5 has a story about some horrible thing that happened in Stoughton and it involves an employee. I really think I should have known before Channel 5.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walsh. Mr. Cohn, same question.
One of the ideas is to get the town manager get a weekly report from their department heads and a monthly report, put them together. First of all, they don't have this happening now that I know of. Get your department heads together, get a report, and give it to the selectmen. Number two, get a well report every week on water use. Our water use with the NRRA allows us 1.4 million. We have some wells down, a big one. And when we start buying from the MRRA, it was all part of this whole deal was to take this and draw sub-water from the NRRA. And if we go over 1.4 million gallons, we got to ask permission. And if we don't get it, which I think we will, we're going to be back on the old water bans again, if people remember that. Brown lawns. We should remember that very well. The third one is South Coastal Rail. Don't forget it. They have engineered all the way to Canton Junction for 2 rails. So they're active. They got money for engineering. So they're engineering this already. We might not have the money now. The town manager and department heads met him a year ago. And again, you had a shift of governor, but nothing back from the state yet. We got to push a little harder with South Coastal to make sure if they're not going to do it, that we got it in writing, and if they are going to do it, just make sure that we get something out of this. So far, we have got this, 0. We need something out of it. Number 4 is equipment breakdowns, large ones, how much it costs. That can add up. During the snowstorm, 4 rubbish trucks went down with transmission jobs at $6,000, $7,000 a piece. We can't help it. Plows went down. Police cruisers went down. Big bucks. I'm sorry I can't get to the last one.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Cohn. We have now come to the time for your closing statements. I want to thank you for your response to the questions thus far. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Brown, for the closing statement, and you have 2 minutes.
Okay. I'd like to say thank you for this opportunity. My name is Peter Brown. I grew up in a town kind of similar to this one in both name and makeup. I grew up in Stoughton. I was one of 5 children. I was the middle boy. I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and my parents always taught us respect, honesty, and hard work, and that'll get you through. And my experience takes me, it's not vast, but I sit on the finance board, and I'm an elected member of town meeting. I worked for over 20 years in the Massachusetts Department of Correction, where I obtained the rank of lieutenant. I most notably left the operations, where I was involved in everything from administrative to supervising shifts. I got my education from Northeastern University, where I attended NU on an athletic scholarship. I was a captain of the football team in 1984. I signed with the Memphis Showboats right after, in 1985-86 year, when the league went over to spring to fall. I have a wife who I married who was from Stoughton. She's a lifelong resident. We bought our first house and still live in it today in 1994. We have a daughter who's a freshman at Stoughton High School, who is actively involved with the Council on Aging. She's a member of the Honor Society, Junior Honor Society. She has also plays sports. And recently, I've spent my time, since I've been retired, as, acting as a spokesperson for my 2 nephews who were injured at the marathon. And I ask for your vote, because it's clear to me that the Stoughton residents are looking for leaders that share their concerns, recognize the issues, and are willing to move this community in the direction that we all will agree needs to go. So I respectfully ask for your help and vote on April 7th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Ms. Walsh.
Yes, I'd ask you to please go to the polls on Tuesday, April 7th. Bring a friend. Call your neighbors. As a previous speaker mentioned, over 80% of you will not vote. I'm counting on you folks that will vote, that always vote, to come out and cast one of your 2 votes for selectmen for me. I'd like to continue to serve. Mine's been a lifetime of service. I wouldn't know what to do. There's just so much TV you can watch and so many books you can read, and I do that too. But I enjoy the political game. I enjoy public service. Any of you who have called my home, I know you get the mechanical man and you don't like it, but I return every single phone call. Even if I can tell by the anger in your voice, you and I are not going to end up agreeing. You deserve to be heard, and I make sure that I do that. I do that every single day. I was a teacher for 30 years here in Stoughton. I taught the same grade in the same school, or I went to the same grade when I was a child. If you look up stick in the mud in the dictionary, there's a picture of Cynthia Walsh. She lives in the same house she's lived in since she was 9 months old. and she taught at the same school she went to. And this is the same town hall that they had when I was a kid. I enjoy this. I enjoy serving you. I enjoy teaching your children. And now that they're grown up, they introduced me to their children as their favorite teacher. Now, come on. I know, to my face, that's what they're saying. You can't agree with me all the time, but I think you agree with me most of the time. This town is not on the skids. This town is not on a downward spiral. This is a great place to live. I had choices as a kid. I could have said to my parents, sayonara, and I'm leaving town. Please vote on April 7th. I'm number 2.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. Mr. Cohn.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Feaster. You did a great job. Great job, as you always do. Thank you for the Chamber, the League of Women Voters for having us. Very, very good debate. These are always good to have. The only thing we want you to do is go out and vote. A lot of people in this world don't have the rights that we have. We have it. Exercise it. And another thing, I'd appreciate your vote. Granted, I got into this. I've been in politics now 37 years. Town meeting, finance committee, Little League. I can go on all the time. I've been very active in this town because I love this town. I'm very vocal at town meeting because I love this town. Some people don't agree with me, but if I latch on to you, I'll go down to the bottom of the ship when you go too, or we win and we celebrate. That's the type of person. A lot of people know who I am. I'm not going to change. Still going to be very vocal. I might calm down a little. I'm damn retired now, so I have all the time in the world. I could even set up an office right over there and sit with the town manager and have a nice time with him. I am around. If you notice my ads, have my telephone number in it. People have called me. They've asked me questions. I've answered them as honestly as I can. The only thing I can say to you is, please consider me for one of your votes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cohn. And Mr. O'Regan.
Thank you, Mr. Feaster. Thank you to the Chamber and the League for sponsoring this, and for everybody at home and here watching. It's been a privilege for me to serve as a member of your Board of Selectmen for the past 3 years. When I ran, I promised that I would pay attention to what I heard then, and what I hear now are the most important things that the town wants dealt with. We are having meetings to look at how the traffic in the downtown is going to be solved. 4 years ago, that wasn't going to happen. 3 years ago, I proposed how we would fund it. It was funded. It's happening. 4 years ago, getting the downtown revitalized was a common complaint that we will never get it done. I've worked hard on that. We're there. We're engaged with the post office. We're engaged with the MBTA. We're engaged with the Downtown Businessmen's Association. We're engaged, and it's happening. And you can see the construction going on, and more is coming. We have an economic development officer and a town planner to help us make these things. I've been active in getting these things moving since I was on the zoning board and as a member of town meeting, and very active on your Board of Selectmen to making it happen. Look at how government works. It's tough to see because it's not something you see every day. But think back 4 years ago in the battles between both ends of Pearl Street, the schools and Town Hall. That's gone. I promised we would work hard to make that animosity disappear. Look how the budget was prepared this year, jointly with the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen in a combined meeting, with all kinds of interaction with the school department. That didn't happen 4 years ago. So when I ran, I said I would work on these issues to make these things happen, and they're happening. There's still work to be done. We're on the way up. It's a lot of fun to do, and I hope you'll give me a chance to continue serving.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Regan. I'm going to ask our audience to give you all a hand to thank our selectmen candidates for their responses to the question. We certainly wish you all success in your campaigns.